Hi, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of our podcast with myself and Laura Clark. I'm really delighted today to have Sarah Le Voguer with us. Sarah's been someone who's involved in the talent industry for over 20 years. Um, Presently based in France, has had a career that's extended from recruitment into the whole sort of human capital consulting market. And again, like a lot of the guests we have on our podcast, are people that are really influencers in the space, but may not be on the radar for most people. So it's great having Sarah along today, and good to be with you again, Laura. Hey, Sarah, what would be great is if you start us off. I mean, I'd love to hear about how you got to where you are today.
Sure. No, thank you, Steve, and thanks for having me. And good to meet you, Laura. 20 years, Steve. I was just saying it's a long time. Um, how did I get into recruitment? That's the big question, isn't it? Or it is for people who've been in for 20 years. I actually was going to be a fashion buyer, and I went up to have an interview in London in Carnaby Street with a recruitment company. And they convinced me that I should go into recruitment because I'd earn more money. It was that simple. And it was a company called Freedom Recruitment, and they had amazing offices in Carnaby Street. And I was sold into it, and I thought, oh, this sounds fun, and it was a fun environment. And I didn't last that long there. I think we had meetings every hour on the hour. We had a yellow pages to phone up to try and find our clients. So it was really old school back in the day. And so I stayed there for probably about 3 months. And my last day, when I handed in my notice, I was locked in a room because I was refusing to do the database cleanup. But anyway, so that was my first intro into recruitment. And I ended up staying, and I went to work for Harrison Willis that then became TMP. Stayed there for 4 years doing pure recruitment in the HR space. And then decided I didn't like the sales side of it. And I was trying to kind of I was looking after contractors, so trying to push a contractor. No, I was looking after permanent, trying to push somebody into taking a permanent role when they could get double the amount as a contractor. So I kind of was like, this is just not for me. I'm not very good at trying to push people into doing something they don't want to do. And found a job with TAC Europe, which was my first job on site in the MSP space. And it was with MCI WorldCom, so telecoms. Really interesting time. We had like over 1,000 contractors. We put the program in place, and I loved it. There were a team of us on site and just trying to solve for things and trying to put this solution in place. And then I stayed in that space, moved to AMS, did the same thing, mainly in the contingent space, touched on the RPO for a bit, implemented, ran programs. Then moved into the tech space when I left AMS after 9 years and went to Fieldglass, where we went on this high growth journey, building out the implementation teams, working with SAP, working with Deloitte, etc., IBM, to look at solutions for customers in the tech space, having had the MSP background, and then moved into the ATS space with Smart Recruiters. So I've been all over the place, Steve, Laura. I've been like in recruitment, moved into the MSP space, implemented, moved into the tech space, VMS, then ATS with Smart Recruiters. And now I'm in consulting, given all my experience. I thought, hey, this is, what do I want to do? I don't want to just move into one area. And that's how I've kind of landed up where I am now with the consulting piece.
Wow.
Yeah. A journey.
Yeah, incredible journey.
It's not a typical, in a way, it's not a typical journey. A lot of recruiters go in-house and do that sort of stuff. And I understand the sort of RPO link. Interested in exploring that kind of migration into technology, but actually more interested in the consulting piece, because I think more and more it's part of what we're doing. So, what led you to that as a conclusion? Was it an accident? How do you feel that all the things come together in a consulting environment? You can add a lot of value to businesses, and how do you do that?
Yeah, good question. I think given that I had all the experience implementing programs for customers and really getting into like the process side of it, that helped me understand the technology and how that supports and enables it. When I was at Fieldglass, I was very much involved in helping to consult with customers because they'd bought the technology, but they didn't really know what they were doing with it. And that's mainly where there wasn't an MSP. And I loved that, Laura. I loved being able to consult and advise the customers. But because we were a tech company, we weren't really able to do that. So then obviously I had a couple of jobs after that, still in kind of the tech space. And that's when I was made redundant last year. I thought about consulting before. So it kind of pushed me into it. I'd always been a bit worried about moving into the consulting space away from, permanent employment, even though bizarrely I looked after contingent programs for years. But I was like, come on, you've got all this experience and you love working with clients and you love problem solving. You've got, everything's moving more and more towards kind of the technology space. And so it just seemed to make sense. And I've been speaking with an ex-colleague of mine who'd set up a consulting firm, and it's more on the skills side. And I was coming in with the external workforce. And of course, the whole skills piece is a big thing at the moment. And so it just made sense. I had the external workforce. I knew a bit about the RPO permanent hiring side of it. And I have the ability to drop down into kind of the detail around the processes, how technology can support it, but also how to kind of provide a solution and help the customer, a client with solving for a problem, which, a lot of the time at the moment now it's around the skills piece.
And Laura, can I ask you, you're an owner of a business, you've got a solutions business as well. When you think about consulting and its role, is there alignment between the two sides of the coin in recruitment, between the delivery recruitment agency, RPO, MSP, and this consulting piece? Or is it just another, with due respect, Sarah, is it just another way for clients to part with their money?
I think so. It's a really good question, in my opinion, and in the space that I'm in. So my client base tends to be, so we support on large contingent workforce, mainly in the distribution and warehouse sector, right? So that's our kind of main areas. I think that there is still this perception that you just need to book temps, and you need to book temps in to do a certain job. However, I think that the thought process around that and the impact that it can have by getting that process right, by using, the right recruiter or solution, the right technology, the right processes, is fundamentally part of the success of an organization. So I'll give you an example. We partnered with a client a few months ago that can typically use like contingent workforce, but not on the scale that we offer. Various agencies. We won the contract, which was a brilliant win for us. And a couple of weeks ago, I called the client and I said, give me some feedback. And he said, Laura, this time last year, we were 10,000 deliveries behind. We are not one delivery behind today. And that's the difference between getting this piece right and not. And so when it goes back to that question of consulting, I think absolutely. And I actually think there are many businesses like ours that consult, but for free. Mm-hmm. We don't charge to offer that. We charge when we get the contract. But the piece between actually, pitching and winning, that whole piece in between, we are actually consulting and educating our clients around what a good solution could do for their business. So I think it's definitely an arm that's potentially undervalued in some of the SMEs that we deal with, but is a massive benefit to the success of an organisation.
Mm. And I absolutely agree, Laura. And I think, like you say, there are many organisations out there that do this today for free. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I've been part of that. I think most of the staffing companies, MSPs, do that consulting piece. And I think where I guess I see what I'm offering to be slightly different at the moment is by kind of bridging, when you think about the skills piece, it's being in the client and looking at the learning and development side of it as well, and kind of bridging that whole piece. Now, I'm not saying that, that's not going to come in the future, but right now there is an immediate need for trying to bring together procurement, HR, because often they're siloed, particularly around the contingent and the perm side. So that is definitely something that, needs to be brought together more and more. And then the learning and development. And it's funny because one of the questions, Steve, that you'd given me was just around kind of the future and some of the challenges. And I think in the future, we need to see those So it's many stakeholders coming together within the organisation, including HR, procurement, learning and development, and making sure that their talent acquisition partner is absolutely part of that. So it's not just about the recruitment, it's about the learning and development. It's that bigger picture. So, which I know happens today, Laura, absolutely. But I think more and more, that's where I can see that consulting element helping out and just being a bit more involved in the business.
In the strategy,
Yeah.
the long-term strategy. Yeah, I completely agree. And then I think there's also a real gap between hiring managers and the decision makers. So again, leveling up, because ultimately you're there to get a job done when it comes to the people that are in the business, and what impact that has across the whole supply chain is vital. And I just think getting everybody in the same room to understand what the long-term strategy is and the solution around that is vital. But so many businesses don't have the time, don't have the knowledge, don't have the connections like yourself to be able to do that, and therefore don't actually understand what is available in the market that can help their business perform and grow.
Yeah. And also I think on the technology side, Steve, to, you were asking me earlier, is that technology piece that I feel I can bring is just around being kind of agnostic, because I've just spent the last few months really understanding that tech space, all these emerging technologies that are coming up. And there are so many, and everybody wants the next new shiny thing. And that isn't necessarily the right solution either. So it's helping customers to kind of navigate through all the different technologies that are out there, which will support, their processes. So I think, I think that's where the consulting, whether it's through a consultancy or whether it's through an organisation like yours, Laura, it doesn't matter. It's just at the end of the day, customers need that external consulting where they have got the experience.
Yeah, this whole area fascinates me, because when you think about the amount of spend companies make on people, their traditional approach, there has been no strategy. It's just someone leaves, fill that gap, throw money at it, and actually there's this convergence, right, of tech companies involved in this space would see the whole talent acquisition process as kind of automatable. There's no science in this. This is just, how do you identify talent pools and put them in front of line managers? But to me, a lot of recruitment's sort of like a happy accident. They don't go to market until they actually need to, because someone's left or something's happened or they've got growth. And so the whole thing's it's not a mess, but it's just it's sort of slightly chaotic and not very organised, in a way that if companies took a more mindful approach to planning. And in fact, I talked to Simon Bradbury from AGS not so long ago, and Simon's co-authored a book called The Universal Workforce Model. But what's interesting about that is that in their research, the board and the directors and the senior executives of large organisations are talking about tasks and talking about a completely different way that workforces are engaged, and yet they haven't got the courage to actually do it. So they've got the thinking done, they just haven't done the execution, because there's too much to lose if they're wrong. And also it's not the way the labour market works. So the whole thing's just, in the right place for people to come in and actually innovate and do new things. I just think the whole thing's really, actually for me personally, it's way more interesting than putting people into jobs directly. It's actually trying to outthink this market. And I'm a bit of a tech nerd as well. And I think some of the technology out there now is, wow, it's not AI as in ChatGPT, it's industrialized AI and other things that are actually doing big detail to build talent pools. And anyway, that's really fascinating. You get to live in that world every day, which is pretty interesting.
It's really, really interesting, because there are so many different areas to look at and so many different ways to think about it. Like, even just when you're talking about the task piece, Steve, in the contingent space, temp space, a lot of that's been there already. So why not transfer some of that thinking to the permanent workforce? Like, what are the deliverables that are needed for the organisation? What are the deliverables aligned with business objectives? And start thinking about how those are going to be delivered and what skills are needed. And then, yes, you need to look at your permanent workforce first, but should it matter where you get that skill set from? Should it matter who's delivering it? So, that's a bit controversial, because you need to look at your permanent workforce first. But that permanent workforce is changing as well. You've got the younger generation who want to have more flexibility and don't necessarily want to stay with an organization for, years and years. And so therefore that permanent workforce, which has already shifted to like 50%, I think, in North America, that workforce split is shifting. And so you almost just want to put everybody into this great big pool for the clients to be able to say, these are the deliverables and skills that I need, where can I get them from? And that's where technology can be the enabler. And also it's really interesting because speaking to some of these technology firms, companies where they've developed technology which can capture the skill sets at the beginning during the interview process and ranking, etc., and all of that, that's upfront. So yes, you've got the workforce planning, absolutely, to understand what the future skills are that are needed. And then the technology to help look at bringing in those skills or where those skills are. If you've got one talent pool, that will be the challenge. But with integrations, great that two systems can talk together. There's so much, Steve, and I'm just going to blabber on. But also going right even back before the workforce planning, you almost need to look at those skills gaps and the whole education system. Like, how do we, the fact that we're looking at degrees or have been, should we be looking at degrees? Great article I read yesterday that I posted on, because massive organisation, 750,000 employees have just done away with degrees.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much in here that we are in such an amazing place to make these changes for our kids' future and make sure that, there's all this inclusion. Shouldn't matter if you have a degree. That's a whole nother topic as well.
Sarah, how do you feel about the risk of technology? So from my perspective, when you're speaking, I completely and utterly understand the need to identify skills, the market, what business you need what people do you need in your business to help it develop and grow. But there's a part in my heart that hurts, because what you miss during that process is people that may not have exactly the right skills, but have the right values, outlook, thought processes, EI, to be able to be a great leader in your business. And I fear that technology can overlook such an important part.
Yeah.
And so whilst I'm for technology, we have lots of tech in our business that helps our task orientated parts of our process reduce and become much more productive and efficient. I do fear that we're going to miss the element of the human nature that actually helps your business grow.
Yeah.
I would not recruit most of my successful people in this business today if I was to only have profiled them on skills that I needed in this organisation.
Yeah.
So therefore, they would have never reached through that process.
Yeah. And I think that is definitely a risk. I don't think that it should be technology alone, Laura. I think, as I say, it's an enabler. It shouldn't be tech solves the problem. And this is where, I've seen a lot of clients over the years buy technology and think that that's going to solve their problem. It's not. So it comes back to the processes, the policies, the people, etc. So absolutely, it should not just be the technology alone. That is a source of giving you some of the data, but it shouldn't be the only solution. So it's not going to eliminate people. It's not going to completely automate it. It shouldn't.
There are a lot of organisations that is happening. So I see it. You have a list of requirements, whatever tech role you're recruiting for example, or an engineer, you must have this, this, and this. And anyone outside of that is automatically not put forward to the client.
Yeah, but is this sort of a transitional thing where actually the work practices are going to change, or is it where really this sort of culture clash between some of the stuff that I was always taught about loyalty and commitment and all those things are becoming commoditized and sort of put in the bin in exchange for, look, you can just come in and do the job for as long as I need, and then I'll just go get someone else. Is this a transition from one to the other, or are we just stuck in this no man's land?
I'm quite controversial in my thinking. Steve, you and I have had quite a few debates on what does the future look like in terms of technology. I can see how it can work mainly in the contingent workforce, where you do have a gap of skill and you need to have someone to do a job and then the job is done. But I feel that there will be a reform at some point where technology plays a part, but the damage is done, and then we go back to a different form of hiring. So I don't know if you agree. I'm on the fence. I personally can't see, having run my own business and understanding the type of personalities and culture fit you need in the business to be able to move a business in the direction you need it to go. If I was to recruit, we're 50 people, we're nothing, you're not millions of people across the whole of the UK or the whole of the world, sorry. So is obviously a place for that level of tech, but I wouldn't be where I am if I was to use purely technology. So I think the answer is that there is a middle ground with tech and personality profiling, whatever it is that you involve in that technology.
Yeah. And I don't disagree. When I talk about technology, I'm not supporting and saying it solves all the problems and it should just be, I think I'm probably with you, Laura. Sorry, I'm not going to argue and debate with you, but no, I'm with you. It has to be that middle ground. It has to be, but I think, there was a part of me that was thinking, okay, well, you still have people interviewing. There should still be people interviewing. But at the end of the day, what you're saying is that net, or it's eliminated some of those people from actually getting through to that interview stage. Yeah, that's the thing that I think we need to solve for, because it shouldn't be that technology is the decision maker. And it's interesting, when I was working with one of the VMSs and, talking to some of our customers about the fact that it could do the skills or the CV matching, a lot of the clients didn't want that. They didn't want the machine to tell them these are the people these are the best matches. So, yeah, I think it's going to be. I think the technology firms are definitely creating that because that's what they believe is needed, and some clients are doing it. But it'll be interesting to see over the next couple of years how well that works, and if we do go back.
Yeah, but I think for me, and I'll kind of play devil's advocate, although I'm kind of conflicted because I want to believe what you want to believe, but then if I step outside of my box and the way I'm conditioned to think, I start looking at all the other variables, like globalization and the ability that unless it's a physical job, why does it need to get done in the same place? Or instantaneous translation, in technology, so language ceases to become a barrier. But also then on the other side, you've got regulation, where how do people collect tax? And you've got these other models now in places like Scandinavia. They're actually going to do a test here in the UK as well, where they're just going to pay people. The government's going to pay them whether they work or not, in order that, this whole concept of work is being challenged because of technology and because of all sorts of other things. So, for me, like, maybe it's never going to happen in my lifetime, but I just think it's fascinating that, there's this broader issue around, what do they call it, the fourth industrial revolution, and, this move to knowledge work. And, I asked an economist not so long ago, I was at a presentation and shared the kind of stage with him. And I said to him, we're teaching 4-year-olds to code. Like, who's going to fix my toilet? Because no one wants to be a plumber. And you know what he said, which is fair, like an economist would. He said, Steve, when there's no plumbers, a plumber will get £10,000 a day. There'll be plenty of plumbers. So at the end of the day, supply and demand still fit. So, I think the whole thing's fascinating when you talk to tech providers. And, again, one of the things I've noticed, maybe you both have a view on this, that recently attending a big conference, the larger corporations and the larger providers of talent services are separating further and further away from the mid-tier of companies and agencies and suppliers. They're coming up with their own ways of doing things. So maybe this whole conundrum is isolated to the very big corporates.
Yeah.
Do you think maybe that's more, it might work the other way, where there's different types of solutions at different parts of the market?
I believe so. I think that if you are looking to hire in excess, large volumes of people across the world, you are going to naturally need a level of technology. You can't have a team of hundreds of people calling every applicant in the hope that you find a gem that's going to fit into your culture. It makes no sense, and it wouldn't be viable financially. So I believe so. And not just necessarily scale, Steve, but I also believe types of role. level of recruit that you want in your business as well. It would be isolated within.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's interesting because when you think about it from a human point of view, we all have this big need for each other. So like I love
Yeah.
when I go to the local market on a Saturday, you get artisan bakers and all this stuff now, where
Mm.
people that make bread like at home are actually able to sell it and people want to support that thing. So we have this kind of innate need for community, which is a real conflict with all the tech providers. And I think the whole thing's super interesting, and what I do know is I think that if you don't adapt or change, then there's a real issue, because things will change. How radically they change, I don't know. And I think there are lots of businesses in the recruitment space that are hanging in there, that aren't prepared to even look outside of the four walls of their office. And I hope that they start to understand what's happening. Sarah, what do you think? Look, specifically when it comes to recruitment, and we're touching on this all the time, but I mean, do you think this is going to be a debate that goes on for a long time, or do you think by 2030 there will be some transformation in the market and the way it really works?
I'd like to think there will be that transformation. Well, I feel like we're behind the curve right now. So I feel like we've got quite a long way, quite a lot to do in the next couple of years to get to where it needs to be. So by 2030, we'll probably be having another conversation. So yeah, I think big transformations need to happen now in so many ways, in so many different areas. Like I said, education, the remote working you touched upon. Some countries allow people to work in their country for 90 days and pay tax in their own country. There are some, policies in place already, but they need to all be in place right now. Do you know what I mean? I feel like we're massively behind the curve. So I think it will be a different conversation in 2030. I don't know what that will look like. No idea.
I haven't got a crystal ball.
Yeah, but I think we've all got a lot to do to solve for the challenges that we have today, definitely. And I don't think technology will resolve it all. But I also would say with technology, given ChatGPT and how easy it's going to be able to develop some of this technology in the future, I do think that there are going to be maybe more, even some of the larger clients creating their own technology to suit what they need. Because some of the technology that's there on an enterprise level today is not flexible enough or agile enough.
And it's true. And yet people are really complex. And so, people are trying to apply this sort of simple linear solution to a pretty complex beast in the way people do that and why they do it. What's their motivation for work? Is it financial? Is it cultural? Is it self-esteem? Is it status? There's lots of other drivers, and it's very hard for some of the technology to pick up on that sort of nuance of how that works. Sarah, can I ask you a question? So what gets you fired up professionally then?
Oh, I like to solve problems. I love being client facing. I think that was one of my challenges in some of the roles that I've had. It was being, very sort of operational, but I like to be in front of clients, people, and solve for their issues. I think for me, the biggest thing, it's not financial. For me, it's just being able to do something, get a pat on the back, or just for people to kind of recognize that, I've solved their problem and I've been a bit innovative as well. And I think the reason why I moved into consulting is because it allows me to have a bit more freedom, to be a bit more creative. I should have gone down the creative path, but I chose the business route many, many years ago. It was either graphic design degree or business. And I went for business because at the time it gave me a bit more money. Yeah. So I like to be creative as well. And I think that's what I like at the moment is with all this transformation, we can be a bit more creative and a bit more disruptive. So solving problems and making people happy. I like to make people happy, Steve.
That's not a bad thing, Sarah. That's fine.
Yeah.
I invariably think that's a good idea. I try to do that as well, and sometimes it doesn't quite work out. I've never asked you this question, even though I know you well. What fires you up professionally?
It's really weird. I've been thinking about this lots over the last probably few weeks of months, because For me, 5 years ago, it was to own this business, and I'm here now. And so I've almost reached that goal. I'm now looking ahead as to what the next goal is. And it's a combination of so many different things that it's very difficult to articulate. But it's a feeling. For me, it's getting up in the morning and making a difference. I also like to make people happy, Sarah, sometimes at the detriment of actually good decisions. So I'm working on that massively because I think that's important. When you're trying to run a business where it's got 10 people, it's a lot easier to influence. But when you get larger, you have to accept that you can't keep everybody happy all the time. But what gets me fired up professionally is just having a really positive impact on the people around me, whether that's clients, candidates, people that work for me, friends, family. I want to be someone who leaves a room and they go, she was cool. She said something today that really made me look at things differently, or she asked me a question that really made me think in a different way. And I don't want to get out of bed every day and do the same thing. So I think that's why running a business really works for me. I like the diversity and the change. And I'm just really excited about the next stage of this journey for me. What that goal is, I think I need to do a little bit more work on what my next goal is. It's like you buy the house that you want, and then you go, right, okay, now I'm here. What's next? And actually, sometimes you've got to stop and enjoy what you've done. So I'm kind of there, Steve, in an answer. I'm not quite sure exactly where I'm going next, but I know it's going to be on to more and better things.
Yeah,
Good for you.
I kind of debate that with myself a lot, like this whole idea, because it's different every day for me, and that's so frustrating.
Mm.
And I want, like, I've got a lot of passionate sort of undertones about things. Like inclusion is a really important thing for me personally,
Yeah,
and so that kind of underpins a lot of stuff. But yeah, I mean, I get up, I'm pretty energetic and enthusiastic about most things, and I try and keep that focused and positive, on positive change. I do get frustrated by some of the stuff that I see and experience. I guess I want to see bright young people come through the industry and enjoy the industry, because I think it's a great industry. I don't like the way that manifests itself sometimes, with people sort of see it as a bit of a gap year, not a career. I think that's a bit frustrating. So I don't know. I haven't got there yet. That's like people say, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And I haven't really grown up yet. So maybe
no.
Don't grow up, Steve. Don't grow up.
No, don't grow up. It's really difficult. I listen to quite a lot of podcasts and read books, and you hear Simon Sinek talk quite often about your why.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it's wrong to say out loud, because I feel like at the moment with all the self-motivational speeches and podcasts and everything you listen to, you should really know your why. And if you don't know your why, where are you going? But I think if I only had one why, I'd be pretty bored.
Yeah.
So that concept for me is not very fitting to my personality. I think, my why is I just want to enjoy it. Whatever that looks like and wherever that takes me, I want to have some fun with it. That's my why, but I don't know if that's a strong enough why.
Yeah.
No, but that's you though, Laura, and that's great. And I think that goes back to us all being able to be who we are and authentic. I think back in my career, there were times when I worked for organisations way back where I felt I had to be somebody else. And I guess with age, you get more confidence to be authentic. But I feel today it's a lot more acceptable for you to be yourself rather than trying to be someone else. And I love that about the industry, and I love that just about the world in general. But also a bit like you, I get bored so easily. But I have quite a long tolerance. So I let that play out for quite a long time. Whereas now, coming up to 50 this year, I'm not going to let that happen. So yeah, like you, just want to enjoy it. My dad is a northerner and Yorkshire man, and he instilled in me to have fun. At 75, he's still teaching. He's retired, but he's still teaching. And you would never think that he, is 75, because he acts so much younger. So to your point, Steve, we need to just act young, playful, just have fun.
Yeah. It's hard to do. I mean, because I agree with you, right? And by the way, 50 is a distant memory for me, but it was good. I remember that.
I've got some time yet, guys, just to put that out there.
Stop showing off, Laura. But the gripping of, people who've got mortgages and kids, and, it's just, so having fun sounds like a great notion, but hardly anybody ever really gets to achieve that, I think, even though it's a great goal, right? something to pursue. So with that in mind then, Sarah, and I'm going to ask you too, Laura, right? So if you weren't doing what you do now, what would you be doing?
Oh, yes. So many things. I had so many ideas, but actually, when I boiled down to it, I think I would love to have an activity centre where I've got the creative stuff going on because I've got my creative side. I do pottery and stuff. I like making things. So I'd want to have like a creative place, activities, but it's a place for underprivileged children to come. I'd want an activity centre.
That's cool.
Take from that what you will.
That's good.
You know,
I love
I
that.
thought I would love to have a place sitting on a mountain just doing nothing. But actually, no, I would be so bored. And I love helping people, like I said. So actually, I would love to have an activity centre for the underprivileged.
What's holding you back from doing that now, Sarah?
Honestly, language. Living in France, Laura. So I've got space and there's opportunity to do it. I need the language to be able to navigate through some of this. So I'm taking French lessons and improving my French. So it could happen, or I want it to happen, Laura. But I need to just, maybe have another couple of years working and then see where I can get to. And the French.
Yeah.
How about you, Laura?
Oh, my friends would tell you that I should be a DJ because I love music and having lots of fun. And I've got a crazy wild side. When I had my eldest child, so I've got 4 children. I had my eldest, who's now 12, William, when I was 22. So I think that dampened a lot of my crazy side because I had serious responsibilities at quite a young age. But honestly, for me, and this, I again, both of you, I struggle with this kind of why. I really enjoy money. So I would have always done something in business, and not money for materialistic things, but actually for the freedom that it gives me.
Mm.
So 2 of my biggest motivators is freedom. To be able to, and that's why recruitment's great, I think, for me, because you can see who you want when you want. You can go and meet different clients when you choose. You can go and have coffees with candidates. The freedom that recruitment gives you. We talk about this whole 9 to 5 concept, and you shouldn't be sitting behind your desk, and we should be hybrid working. I don't actually think people sometimes understand the freedom and the learns that recruitment can give you. So apart from being a DJ, Steve, which is a bit of a weird answer, right? I think if you actually cut me open and looked in my black veins, I do genuinely think recruitment is in my DNA, which sounds super cheesy, but I'm not sure there's many other industries that would give me what I love the way that recruitment does.
That's pretty cool, though. I mean, because I went through a weird phase where I loved recruitment, and I always say to people, like, I'm very fortunate. I've had, when they tell you to get into recruitment for all the reasons you should, but hardly anyone ever gets to do, I actually got to do. And so I'm one of the few that have kind of had that corporate career that, I've worked in different countries. I've done all sorts of crazy projects in different parts of the world and, met some amazing people along the way. But I did fall out of love with it for a while.
Did you?
Yeah, I got very frustrated by it and got very kind of like down on the whole idea of the way it works. And then I've kind of come out the other side now where I thought, you know what, I've been around long enough that I can positively change it. I can, the things, stop being frustrated about stuff, but actually try and do something about it. And I think I'm in a much happier place and better place with the industry because I'm excited about where it goes instead of being sort of stuck in the mire of sometimes where it is. And again, as I've gotten older, things have changed. Like if I'd asked myself the question, what would I be doing? If I'd asked that question of me 20 years ago, clearly, I wanted to be a professional sports person of some description, probably cricket. But now, my interests have changed. Like I'm way more interested in, when I say culture, I don't want to sound highbrow. I'm hardly highbrow. But, I have a very passing interest in, like, my son's an artist. So all of a sudden that's kind of got me thinking about things like that. Or, my kids' businesses become invariably more important than my own. But probably I would have been an airline pilot.
Oh,
Okay.
That's random after.
Yeah, that was just like a bit of a bomb you dropped there on that one.
So boys with toys, I like the idea of flying a giant machine like that. I couldn't say how cool that's like the ultimate ride on lawnmower.
I thought you were going to say like a big fast fighter jet.
No, I mean like a big one full of passengers. So basically, so I can land at somewhere there and go and sit in a deck chair for 3 days
Love
and then
that.
fly it back again.
Oh, I love
Steve,
it.
you mentioned you fell out of love of recruitment. Was there a pivotal point that happened, or was it a time? Like, was there a moment where you thought, I've had enough? And what was that moment?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Laura. So yes, there was. So I'd spent the majority of my career in big boardrooms, right? And I was kind of challenged. Like, I'm very interested in inclusion, and I hate people being treated poorly. Whether it be at work or outside of work. I just think we're all humans doing our own thing. Let everybody get on with their own thing, right? Don't judge, just embrace it all, and let people enjoy their own life the way they want to do it. But yeah, Laura, I mean, there was a few things happened very close to each other. One was I was in a board meeting, everyone wearing suits, and someone said we couldn't start the meeting till someone went out and got us sandwiches. And I thought, what does my life come to, right? That, I think I'm that important, that I'm in a room, that some poor person's got to come and wait on me when I'm perfectly capable, of that. And then I started thinking about, well, when just talking, what problems are we actually solving here? And then I kind of got this reality check, we're all just passing through. Because when I've left big jobs, the reality was, you think you've made a huge difference, and then weeks later you find out no one remembers you were there, and somebody's jumped into your job and they're going to do it better than you did it anyway. And so then I got this kind of reality check, I'm okay with that. I did my bit at the time and then I moved through. So it was like stupid stuff, like the idea that there was a group of us in a meeting room having someone wait on us, and I thought, that's just not how it works. I don't want to do this anymore. We couldn't start the meeting until someone bought us lunch. Like, big corporate game playing and, all that stuff. And I just thought, there's just got to be more to this. I've got to add more value. I've got to be a better human. So that was kind of it. And recruitment, I'd been in loads of meetings for years and just thought, really, what are we, as my wife said to me very early in my career, when I'd come home from work all excited, she'd say, you're not curing cancer, right? Get a grip. It just took me a while.
Yeah. I think we've probably all been there. I think I've definitely been there as well. And I think but now coming back, I say back, but really back into it with the consulting piece, it feels really like an exciting time.
Yeah, I agree.
To make some of those changes, rather than, it feels like there's so many things that have just been the same for the last 20 years, but it's changing, which is good. Yeah. And Laura, just quickly, I wanted to be a DJ. I was going to say that.
But you didn't.
I didn't. I know. I was like, but I'm with you, and that's probably why Steve thought would be a good. But
good match. There's something quite free about being able to travel the world and be playing music. I mean, what a better job.
I want to be a female David Guetta and just travel around the world and just.
I can see it, Sarah. Your name has got David Guetta vibes as well.
I'm from such a different era. I can't think of anything worse. I see all those shows on TV, 4,000 people shoved in a room big enough for 400 people, and then
no, open air. These have to be open air.
No, my vision's outside.
Mine too, definitely. But I used to do a bit of DJing and scratching and mixing back in the day.
Wow,
love that.
I just don't want to tell you something I've done that's cool, but I have nothing. I have nothing. Empty. Guys, look, thank you very much for your time. It's been fun as usual. And yeah, we'll look forward to next episode. Sarah, we might get you back to have another chat about life, the universe, and the world of recruitment.
Yeah, I love that. No, thank you, guys. Really good to be on your podcast.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you, Sarah.